like I was just saying, I normally have a set of questions, and we can do a quick overview of who you are. I think because anybody who doesn't know who you are can kind of find out in a quick 5 minutes. And I think something happened last week in the local elections that I think a lot of people who previously were unaware and now realize there's a bit of an existential crisis going on. Yes. I don't think it's as bad as they think because voter turnouts were so low, but I think we're at the beginning of a warning cycle. And what I had originally wanted to talk to you about, because you're very practically minded, I'm very northern. So if something doesn't serve a function, I don't see the point.
Yes, indeed.
And what attracted me to you on X was the fact that you were the only person I'd seen who would say, okay, that's nice, but how are you going to do that? And if I was going to do that, I'd do that this way. And then nobody else does that. Because I would sit and think, all right, so if I ran that organization, how would I do that? How would I get around that? How am I going to get rid of that guy? How am I going to get all those people on side? How would this work? How would that work? And no one else does that. They just have a, this is my will be done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I originally wanted to talk to you about, how. And then this happened, and I thought, we have a different set of, we've got immediate problems, and then we've got long-term problems. And it's almost like the long-term problem is for later.
Yes.
And so, so if you want to give everybody a quick overview of who you are, then we'll get into
not much to tell, really. Basically a blogger of going on 20 years. I've been involved in online blogging. And just someone kept the receipts, basically. Someone who in this business, quite a rarity, is someone with a functioning long-term memory. And if you've got a long-term memory, then a lot of the past comes into the present, and you tend to find that a lot of writers and columnists, their experience and their knowledge threshold goes back only months. They don't accumulate the knowledge, whereas I seem to be, I wouldn't say unique, but of a small number of people who actually keep an internal timeline of how we got to where we are. So I think that's why people appreciate what I write. I think it's just because I remember things. It's not that I have a high profile following, and if I did, I'd get banned. So it's just a blogger. I rose to some prominence during Brexit due to knowing what I'm talking about, which is again a rarity in the side of technical governance. But yeah, nothing special, just a bloke with a Twitter account. So
it's a very English, humble attitude. But I think from the outside looking in, it's almost a Monmouthian court historian position that you take, where you are chronicling and looking, okay, that led to this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. But there's also a foresight. A lot of people don't have foresight. I would say I have a certain degree of foresight. If you push that, in 20 years, you're going to have that there. And I think there are certain causes and inevitabilities. And I think you have a degree of being able to go, well, hang on, this is the 20-year cycle of falling dominoes. And I can see where you're going. Like it's not even prophetic. It's just logic. It's like,
and a hefty dose of pessimism. If you assume the worst, then that's usually the right ballpark. It's everyone. Everyone lately has been saying, we need to destroy the Tories, and we want the Tories to get 0 seats. And then something magical will happen, and a new movement will arise and fill this political vacuum. And I'm just saying, well, is it? Will it? What's the guarantee? Let's look at the component parts. We've got a useless Tory party, which is hopelessly fragmented into 3 factions, none of which understand each other. You've got half a dozen quasi-ethno-nationalist one-man band parties. You've got a defunct UKIP party that can't really escape its baggage. Then you've got the SDP, which is a sort of nerdy version of UKIP. Then you've got the largely incompetent bed blocker that is Reform. And you look at the chess pieces you have to play, and none of them are actually any use given the situation you're in. So there is actually no reason to believe that this movement is going to appear. So you got to game all the different scenarios. A lot of the political thinking is predicated on Reform continuing to grow and continuing to eat into to the Tories, and then the Tories might suddenly start paying attention. But of course, the result from the Blackpool South election. Now, if you look at Blackpool South, it's a high-density terrace constituency. So it's actually quite easy to mount an effective ground game there in terms of delivering leaflets, posters, and making a local impact. But that doesn't seem to have happened. Reform got about 3,000 votes, which indicates 10,000 Tories stayed at home. And Labour actually got 2,000 votes less than last time it stood and still won the seat. So what we're seeing is a withdrawal of voter consent. And if you look at the wider results, there's more atomization and fragmentation going on, but Reform isn't the beneficiary of it. Galloway's lot, various Muslim bloc independents, the Green Party, Lib Dems, the spare votes are going literally anywhere but Reform. So it doesn't look like Reform is growing. And whatever impact that it might have, what we call the UKIP effect on the Tory party, it is neutralised by the similar numbers of people on the left who are abandoning Labour. And so you've got this unreadable situation where the headline polls, the Westminster polls, give Labour this enormous lead, but these polls can't detect the signals of who intends to stay at home, where all these sporadic protest votes are going to go. And, Labour would be on course for a landslide if it was as popular as Blair's New Labour, but of course we all know it isn't. So it looks closer to a hung parliament territory, where there is a rump Tory party left, and in all probability, the Tories always learn the wrong lessons. So they're going to say, oh, we lost, and it's because we were too right-wing, and we need to be more of a centrist party and start appealing to the middle ground. And so conservatism or anything remotely right-wing nationalist is completely vanquished. And there are none of the, I'm looking at it thinking, where do we breathe oxygen onto the embers to get a flame? And I just don't see it. What is going to come and replace the Tory party? We've seen on Matthew Goodwin's Substack and his speech to National Conservative Conference in Brussels that there's the suggestion that he's been discussing with Dominic Cummings, a sort of new party with a philosophical base. We don't know how that's going to turn out. But what I can tell you is if it's going to roll out Liz Truss and a top-hatted Rees-Mogg and the usual deadbeats inspired by the Institute of Economic Affairs with its laissez-faire economics, that is just not where the Conservative feeling is now. It's looking at the world as it is now. If you look at trends in Europe, it's becoming more populist, more economic nationalist. There's disparate moves to challenge and dismantle the single market. Free trade is in reverse. Globalization is reversed. The push is for more on the right is for more ethnocentric policy, whereas the push on the left is a move toward socialism. So if there is going to be this movement that appears out of nowhere, it is just as likely to just appear out of the left. Because I noticed this, there's a Twitter account, I forget its name, but it posed a question looking at George Galloway's outfit, ghastly though it is. And he says, you as a nationalist or conservative, are you more likely to get more of what you want out of George Galloway's party than the Conservative Party or any of the alternatives on the right? And the depressing yet accurate answer is yes. There's, George Galloway would have far more socially conservative values. And if you look at how he thinks, he's very easily understood in that the psychology of Galloway is he absolutely despises the neoliberal mess that the Labour Party has become. And everything he does is motivated by a detestation of the Labour Party and a desire to destroy it. Well, that's a very potent sentiment that could just as easily pick up the old socialist left that kind of gravitated to UKIP as we were approaching Brexit. So the previous sort of pre-2019 paradigm that the revolt on the right was growing and would keep growing and manifest to replace the Tories. We can't take that for granted. So the situation is more unreadable than it has been for a very long time. And so we can say with reasonable certainty that the Tories are going to lose, but they won't be wiped out. So they're going to occupy that space while they have a civil war. We don't know which side will win. We know if the Liberal Internationalists win, they will lose an election. So Labour could occupy office for 10, possibly 15 years. But then it's by no means assured. Say, for example, the National Conservatives win control of the Conservative Party. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be any more attractive because it won't. It will still seek to be mainstream. It will stop short of a lot of the radical policies that people want. So you'll still have a reform-esque or UKIP-esque movement on the right that still wants more ethnocentric immigration policies. And of course, nobody will trust the Tories. So there's actually no guarantee that the Tory party will win even 10 or 15 years down the line, even if it is the supposedly right-wing conservative movement that people say they want. So I'm thinking in terms of the right is nowhere near retaking meaningful power for 20 years. And so people on the right need to be thinking, looking at all of these disparate organizations, and most of them are useless, incompetent bed blockers, particularly reform in its current state. I don't know if it can be repaired. But it's looking more and more like that the right is completely vanquished. And if it wants power, it's going to have to start building a movement from scratch with a 20-year plan rather than thinking